friends that I've known for a very, very long time, Corey McCullough. You are a professional ghostwriter and copy editor, also an award-winning fiction author, and an award-winning now screenwriter since the last time we talked. And I'm a little bummed out that I haven't gotten a whole screenwriting script thing from you, because I have a feeling that...
man. Yeah, that was one of those things that was kind of unexpected, but... Add that to the resume, right?
I love it. That whenever you tossed it out there, you were doing that. I'm like, this is awesome. Sometimes I think I get more excited for your stuff than you do, just because it's like, I don't know, it's fun to watch your friends succeed.
That's how I feel about you. I'm like, the first time that we did this podcast thing, it was just kind of like, I don't want to say it was like, it was a lot different than this. Let me put it this way. This is like so much more like put together and everything. And like, you've only been doing this for like a year or so. And so it's been crazy to see like you kind of have this rise from like where you started. I don't know. It's really inspiring for me to watch.
Well, thank you.
And am I your first returning guest?
So technically you're the first returning guest in a gap. So peeling back the screen from people, for everybody who doesn't have a podcast, usually when a guest is on and there's like a part 1 and 2, it's just the episode cut in half. You know what I mean?
I'll take it.
So you are the first returning guest for sure. And
there we go. I'm honored.
If nobody went back, if you want to see how far this has progressed, go back and watch Corey's first podcast. I think that
I don't know if you do want to go back and watch it, but
it's all right.
There's some good stuff in there.
There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's interesting. So I just thought about we're gonna dive right into it, because you being proud of me being proud of you, I actually just started thinking about this today. So it's coming up on that part of the year where there's like the parent teacher conferences in school, and I've shared with you
for us.
Yeah. I've shared with you some of the screenshots of things that I'm like, what the fuck? And like these new things that we're navigating that I don't necessarily think our parents had to navigate. Things were a lot different back then, which is fine. And I started to think, and actually today in the shower, I was thinking about you and Meatball and Pootie and Dusty, and I was like, you know what?
We're always. Never mind. I'm just gonna make a shower joke. Never mind.
Yes, I am always thinking about men in the shower. Yes. And I was like, if they would have looked back and like analyzed the day to day of especially me, of all of us, right? And Caleb had his fair share of things too. Like, we weren't top of the class. We weren't Pootie, who was killing it all the time, right. And people most definitely would have had their concerns about us, at least, some of us. And I just am like, you know what? Everything's fucking fine. Like, your kid will learn to read. Your kid will learn to write. Your kid will learn to be kind, hopefully, as long as you're being kind. Like, this overproduced, hyper-focused, like, I don't even know where the culture's heading on like, I don't really know even where I want to go with that. Like, it's just overstimulation of everything, where you have to be the best at like all these areas, and your kid's constantly compared to the other 99th percentile of the class or whatever. And look, my daughter's doing fucking great, but even if she wasn't, she's fucking 6. Like, I don't ever remember like coming home, and maybe my mom protected me from it because I wasn't a good student, and then being like, your kid, and Sloan School doesn't do this, but I have friends that their schools are doing this, and like telling them where their child is nationally compared based off all these grades. I'm like, I don't remember that. Like, we were able to just be fucking kids, So, anyways, are you dealing with that back home?
I mean, I think back sometimes with stuff like that too, and I think of the advice that we were told. With us, it was just like, not all of our parents, for our generation, not all of our parents got to go to college, right? Like, it wasn't an assured thing that they were going to be able to. And like a lot of people from our generation were the first of their families to be able to go to college. And so when we were growing up, that was the advice, right? It was just like, just go to college, just get a degree so you can just get a good job. And so there was like a huge focus put on how your grades were and like whether you were achieving with stuff like that. And now it's kind of like, I look at it and, but like recently my oldest daughter said something about like, well, I don't want to go to college. And I was just like, cool. You know, like, which I feel like if I would have said that when I was a kid, all the teachers and the adults around me would be like, whoa, we got to, we got to get this kid on track so we can get to college, because otherwise he's not going to. And it's like, I don't know, things have just changed a lot in that regard. You see these jobs advertised where it's like master's degree to make $15 an hour or something,
Yeah.
It's just, the fields became so much more competitive because so many people now have college degrees.
Right.
And so I guess that's kind of a tangent for what you were talking about, but I see that as like, I think it has caused me to adjust whether or not I think my kid is doing okay. Because, we were taught that you have to go above and beyond, go that extra mile and like be a high achiever. And I don't know, I'm starting to think sometimes okay is okay. Like,
yeah.
How many of those people who are high achievers or were at that time, like they're not doing so good, mentally right now, or
right.
like they're just not happy. And it's like, I don't know. Sometimes with the benefit of hindsight, I wonder what that sort of achievement mindset that we were taught in school did to some of us.
Yep. And I still think, we've had long conversations about this. I still think we're kind of even undoing some of that now, because it's like seeing Sloan, so I'll share because I don't care. At the parent-teacher conference, one of the complaints or one of the things towards Sloan was that during this certain period of time, we're supposed to draw and color a very specific way and learn how to do this very specific thing. And she's like, and see here, she put hearts everywhere. And I was like, that's awesome. And she's like, no, it's the time where they're supposed to do this very specific thing. And later they have time to do it freehand. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then she's like, and then see, she did it again here, and like drew this picture. Like there was a picture drawn, then it was like, I love you or something with like a heart on it. I was like, I think that's awesome. And she's like, yeah, but it's a different time. And I'm like, hey, you're probably not going to love this, but in my house, like, I kind of don't mind the fact that she does things a different way and isn't in the box and isn't doing the coloring at the exact time she's supposed to do it. And, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but everywhere we go and everybody that has her over for a play date tells me how she's the kindest and nicest and most respectful kid. And at home, it's not always like that. And we navigate through those situations because sometimes I'm like, I'm taking fucking crazy pills because I don't know what kid you just described, but
yeah,
I'm not going to tell her to not do those things, not draw hearts all over stuff, not put I love you everywhere. Are you kidding me? If that's her basis for the rest of her fucking life, that she loves life so much that she wants to draw hearts all over everything, thank fucking God. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see, I guess from a teacher's perspective, it's like, I don't know, that just seems like they're really exercising some sort of control. And it's more like, you must listen to me and you must do it exactly the way that I say. And because really, like you said, what does it matter?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like that's what she wants to do. That's how she's expressing herself.
Exactly. And so it's just a fun thing to navigate. That's
got to be difficult for you as the dad to go in there and have a very civil conversation with, because you're not exactly one to hold back when you have something to say.
No. But at the same time, I'm navigating the world of like, okay, this is a school. There are other things, like there's agendas that need to be done. Like I can't just come in and be like, this is the hammer of Thor and this is how you're going to teach my fucking daughter. Like I have to navigate the world in a way of like, if I choose to do that, then I need to homeschool her. Like I need to create a perfect world where that's an ability to be done, and so it's definitely an interesting thing to navigate, especially now, because I just feel like it really wasn't like that when we were growing up. It's almost like there was more freedom I felt, and we were in the public educational system. There was more freedom of that and to express yourself. And as children now, I feel like they need more freedom and more expression. And in that, the schooling system's advancing in the opposite direction. It's creating more control, more, and so they're like literally diametrically opposed to the way that the human mind is trying to behave and trying to shove them in a box. And so it's a very tricky thing to navigate right now.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I'm interested to see when I go in next week for our parent teacher conferences, you know, how things go and what we hear. I mean, with my oldest, she's, you know, we've only ever really heard like good things from the teachers about her, but she's like pretty easygoing. Like my second oldest, she's in first grade. She's 6 years old, and so she's a little bit more on the emotional side than the older one is, and a little louder, a little bit more, you know, like crazy energy and stuff.
I love it.
And one of the things that I know that she's been having problems with this year is that she says that a lot of kids in her class are not well behaved. They're bad.
Mm.
And so when they are bad, the teacher punishes the entire class.
Mm.
And I specifically remember that happening when I was in elementary school, and like how much that upset me.
Yeah.
And because like Nora will come home and she's like very upset. Like the one day, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, she came home, she was really upset because she did not get to finish the project that she was working on in school. And I was like, well, why didn't you get to finish? And she was like, because all the boys were being too loud and we had to all put our heads down. And I was like, all of you had to put your heads down? And she said, yeah, the whole class. And they said we were all being bad.
Mm.
And like there's been other times when she's like had to miss some of recess because since the class was being too loud, they weren't allowed to go outside all at the same time as the other kids. And it's like, that's the sort of stuff that I bet when that happens, she probably has a strong emotional reaction knowing her. And also, when I talk to the teacher, I really am like, I want to bring that up.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's hard when you're not there to actually see it going on, too, because you're getting everything through the filter of a 6-year-old.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there's that also.
Yeah. But I mean, I agree with it. I think that, and you hit it kind of on the nail on the head there. Of course, the boys were acting up. They don't want to sit still. They don't want to be tied down to do those things. They want to be outside. Right. So don't take away their outlet, which to me then, like bringing it back, is what always happened in elementary school for me. Was I was always in trouble, and I was always in trouble and getting recess taken away, and that was the only time I had an outlet. And then I couldn't have the outlet. Yeah,
that's what you want to do. A kid with high energy, you want to make sure that he doesn't go work off any energy. Great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I mean by sometimes I don't think the educational system's changing with the times of the needs of the children. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it's our ability to control it as the parents and, you know, right, make the change happen. But I definitely want to ask like some questions that I feel like have been kind of coming up for people lately. And to me, you are like the quintessential father. Like you have figured out how to have a marriage, have children, be a businessman, work. Like the way you manage and do everything just blows me away all the time. And lately you've been pulling back a little bit from work to make sure that you're spending more time with your son. And I would like to talk about what that looks like and what that takes for you mentally to be able to do, because we are, as men, we are very driven by success in general in terms of like our goals and what we're producing and how we're doing that. And you're very good at what you do. And so how are you justifying that and navigating that in your mind? Because there's not a lot of people that are able, even in the position to be able to do that, let alone willing to do that. And I don't know if I was in that position, if I'd be necessarily willing to do that, because I love what I do so much. You know, that's being very real and honest.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that, but it hasn't come easy at all. You know, my son is my third out of my kids, and for the first two, I mean, like that that whole feeling like you should be working and should be achieving something, or, I really struggle with that. That was something that I really had problems with, where it was just like, because I've been, for just some background for everybody who's listening, I have been basically the stay-at-home dad for all three of my kids because I work from home. So it's like I have the ability to like pull back on work a little bit, take fewer projects, or put some clients on hold if I need to, and I can work during nap times, and I can work late at night, and I can work early in the morning, and I can work around a kid's schedule. So our oldest daughter, she's about to turn 9. So I mean, basically, for the past 9 years, pretty much, I've been in some capacity, staying home as a dad and taking care of kids throughout the day, and then working as much as I can, basically. But that is something that it took me most of those 9 years to not have like a real conflict about that, because there would be times when I'd be at home with a little kid and trying to get them to take a nap or trying to make some food for them or whatever. And it's just like, it's a guy thing where it comes into your head where it's just like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be providing in some other way, or like I'm supposed to be bringing in big money, or I'm supposed to be, it's like that. I don't know. It's like a hunter-gatherer sort of instinct where it's like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I struggle with that for quite a bit. And it's taken getting to this point with my son where I'm just like, I've got the rest of my life to do that. And so, I mean, I think I used this phrase just a little bit ago, like, okay is okay sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like, things aren't going perfectly in my work life right now. I could be making more, I could be doing better, I could be achieving more with it. But I'm like, if I can balance that out and also be staying at home with my son, like, how many kids actually get that? And I think it's the best thing for him. I mean, I don't know. I'm stumbling through this. But I think that I'm seeing a really good relationship form between us because of that. And
do you?
But that's been years where it took me a long time to not feel really conflicted about that. And sorry, I was starting to say this and I got distracted, but there's a lot of, if you hear advice from men online, like entrepreneurs and business guys and personal development, it's like, well, are you willing to sacrifice some time right now so that you can live the way you want to live later? And, put that sacrifice in where you're working late hours so that you can reap the benefits later. It's like, to me, I'm like, okay, I want to turn that around on you. Are you, because that's easy for a guy to work and achieve something and feel like you're out there busting your butt in order to achieve this thing that you want. But it's like, let me turn that around on you. Are you willing to sacrifice that in order to stay home with this little life form who only gets a certain amount of time to develop, only gets, probably in most cases, only gets one dad who's really going to be there for them? And it's like, it's not easy to do that. Mm-hmm. But are you willing to make that sacrifice and be like, okay, for a couple years, I'm dad. Like, later on, I know everybody has to, go and provide and work and stuff. Not everybody can just stay home. But if you can, I don't know, like, dial back a little bit from what your dreams are in order to just be there for your kids as they develop, I mean, like, there's nothing like it. You got to form those relationships early.
And I think that's what makes children want to come home at Christmas time, is forming those relationships early, like later in life. Have you noticed a different level of, I mean, obviously you have 2 girls and a boy, so there's a different level of connection there, period. But have you noticed a different intimacy, I suppose, with him, since you've been able to spend more time with him at a younger age than, the other 2? I mean, too early to tell, of course, and we'll find out as time goes on. But have you noticed at that age level a different level of, like, intimacy or lack of tantrums or things like that because he has so much of your attention on a regular basis?
I think I probably have. I definitely can understand him a lot more. And when I say understand, I don't mean like necessarily what he's saying from a verbal standpoint. It's more like I'm like, okay, this is the time of day when he usually does this, and so I can kind of get on his level a little bit more and understand like why is he upset right now? He's not just throwing a tantrum because he's, you know, I mean, he is too. So terrible twos are a real thing, and sometimes they just get so worked up. But like, I feel like I'm able to react better to what's going on in his life and see what the inputs are and what sort of behaviors come out of that. It's like, okay, what did he eat this morning? Or like, what did we do this morning that we normally don't do, or vice versa? And like, he's so cool because he's only 2 years old, but it's like, we always struggled with bedtimes with the girls, especially the second oldest. Bedtime was always really tough. And with him, it's like I take him in and I lay him down and I'm like, okay, you're going to bed now and I'm going to go. And, you know, for quite a while, he would just be like, okay. And then I just leave and I could hear him talking in there a little bit and then he'd go to sleep. Now it's changed slightly where it's like, I have to explain to him what we're going to do later. Like he starts asking me questions. He'll be like, we're going in the red car when we wake up. I'm like, yeah, when we wake up, we're going to go in the red car. We'll go get your sisters. And he's like, go out and play in the leaves? I'm like, yeah, then we'll go out and play in the leaves. And I said, but first, Jack has to go to sleep. And he goes, okay, Daddy, first Jack go to sleep, then get in the red car, then go get the girls, then play in the leaves. Okay? And I go, okay. And then he's just like, lays down, goes to bed, you know?
I love it.
But if I didn't have that time with him every day where I'm going through that, it would probably be more like a, you know, rocking him, trying to get him, you know, go to sleep. Come on, calm down. But it's kind of like easier, I guess, to know what he needs or wants out of a situation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, no, I mean, it kind of does.
What's going on recently is telling stories about what's going to happen when we wake up.
It kind of does, because I think that, you know, I've been trying to replace more recently the Sloan needs my attention to Sloan needs my connection, you know, and so just by being present more, your level of connection has to increase. And I've noticed a direct correlation to any type of tantrum or misbehaviors to a level of how connected I've been to her, usually within that 24-hour window, you know, and their ability to move through things changes fast, you know, and it's,
oh yeah.
So I love that. But okay, so I have, obviously, my daughter, and one of the things I struggle with and is finding common ground with her at a 6-year-old girl level. Recently, out of nowhere, tickle fights are a thing, so that's super easy. I'm like, let's stay in this phase because Dad can do tickle fights all day long. we're not with Barbies, you know. But finding common ground with her, have you noticed that it's easier to find common ground with Jack as opposed to the girls? How did you figure out how to find common ground? That's been a huge trick of mine, and I know other men who have daughters, it's been the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, before I get into that, so you said you have found that to be a struggle with Sloan, is like relating with what her interests are?
I can pretend, but I only can pretend for so long. Like, I don't want to play Barbies. Like, I'm like, geez, oh man, let's get the Legos out. And like, the Legos are fun every couple weeks, you know? And then it's like, all right, well, you know, a good common ground that we seem to be able to both, you know, mesh on. She loves art, is like painting or coloring or something. Like, I can get a coloring book out and pretend to care to color, but like, I would never do those things alone, you know. And she likes doing things I like to do, so like, we'll go archery, shoot archery, and like, we'll do those things. So I don't know that I'm having a huge issue finding common ground, but a huge issue wanting to participate in some of the common ground things. Like, she wants to play like parent kid, or like brother sister, or teacher student, and I'm like, you know, and she's like, no, Dad, you said it wrong, say it like this. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this, I'm getting very tired, I need another cup of coffee, you know. Does that make sense?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And there's definitely like those times when you're playing pretend when they're younger where you're just like, man, I'm glad nobody's here to see this because this is not where I thought I would be at this age right now. At this, yeah. So it is so much easier actually to just like play and connect with Jack than it is with the girls.
Had a feeling.
Because for him, every toy is pretty much a ball to be thrown. You know, like I can hang out with him and just like throw a ball back and forth, and he loves it. Or like he'll run through the house, and then I'll go ready, set, go, and then he runs the other way. Ready, set, go, and he runs. And he thinks it's great. And so like, I mean, and that's I could lay there and throw the ball for hours, right?
Yeah.
And he's not really to a point where he wants to play pretend yet. I mean, maybe that's coming, and that'll be different ways of playing pretend than the girls did. But with my girls, it was tea parties and dress up and, you know, Barbies, to a lesser extent Barbies, but definitely pretending that, you know, like, oh, hello, okay, we're
Same.
gonna do this. And that is a challenge sometimes to connect on that. But there was, I wish I could remember his name. I can't take credit for this. This is somebody else that I saw a video that he put online where he was like, okay, some of you have been asking, because I guess he made a video about like how important it is to play Tea Party with your daughters and play pretend and play Barbies and stuff like that, and how that pays dividends when they're adults. And because I think his oldest was just getting married or something, and he was saying like what a good connection they have because of stuff like that. And he's like, people are commenting now and saying like, well, how is playing Tea Party with your daughters actually going to get a better connection when they're adults? Like, they don't remember that, do they? And he was like, well, they probably don't remember playing tea parties when we were 3, now that they're 18, but when they're 4, they remember playing tea parties with me when they're 3, and when they're 5, they remember what we did when they were 4, and when they're 6, and it's like, his point was just like, you build up these relationships through like, you know, making that sacrifice of being a little uncomfortable to come down to their level. And just everything to me that I've realized recently is just like, everything comes back to just time. I mean, like, I know that we, as dads, we are very like mission oriented. Like, we have a goal, we want to teach them a certain thing, or like, here's the quality time we're going to have, and this is what we're going to get out of it. And like, kids just aren't that way. The way that you can make those connections with them is just by spending time with them and just being like, I just like being with you. I just like being your friend. I just like hanging out. And I mean, I think we talked on the phone even recently about like how, you know, the kid comes home from school and you can maybe see that something maybe is up. And you're like, is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. It's like, okay. Like, if you then go like, well, I know something's wrong. You got, you know, tell me what happened. Did something happen? Like, usually you're not going to get something out of them in the first like couple minutes, like, because they have a different brain than us. Like, how they connect is not the way that we connect. It doesn't immediately occur to them that there's a certain thing that happened that they should share with you. So, but if you then go home and you start playing with them, or like you hang out, play a board game, you sit and read with them for a little while after you've been hanging out for 15 or 20 minutes, out of nowhere, you might get the, hey, something happened today made me really sad.
Yeah.
Or whatever. At least that's been my experience.
That's exactly my experience, you know, which is why a lot of times parents will say, you know, my child doesn't want to talk to me. And then when it's bedtime, all of a sudden they're like, oh, so-and-so did whatever at school. And part of it's, they want not to go to bed and there's connection there, but they've just had time to process everything and finally feel like talking about it. Like, how many times this comes up for me all the time. And one of the huge things I'm catching myself I was just going to jump. I'm all over the place. One of the huge things I'm catching myself doing.
That's what I do too.
Yeah. One of the huge things I'm catching myself doing now is like, for instance, this morning, it was like, son, pack. So they always have to have like a change of clothes at her school because they go outside no matter what, even if it's raining. Like they put raincoats on and rain boots and like they go outside and play as long as it's not storming. And yesterday she changed because I think she spilled like her water bottle or something. And so she needed, whatever, we need to get other clothes in the bag. So I'm like, someone put clothes in the bag and get your socks and get your shoes. And don't forget you got to brush your teeth still. And I'm like, fuck. Too many things, too many tasks all at once. I hit her with it and then I can see it shutting down. And I'm like, okay, well, what makes me shut down? Like, I fucking hate that, you know? And it's like, what makes me feel overwhelmed? Having all the things to do. This is why you make lists so that it isn't having all. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm starting to catch myself. It's like that. After you've done it, you've caught yourself and you're like, oh shit, like 10 or 15 minutes later. And then like you catch yourself 5 minutes later. Then you catch yourself in the process of doing it, you know, and then you start, that's the process. And then you're like, okay, catch yourself right before you're going to do it. And like, we're right there where as it's coming out of my mouth, I'm like, oh no, oops, sorry, babe. You know, like I told her, I was like, hey, too many things all at once. Don't worry about it. One thing at a time. Let's just simply get the clothes ready for tomorrow. You know, like that type of a thing. And so, I don't know where we were going with that, but that's one of the things that I am finding like myself catching myself on a lot now, like as a dad, like trying not to overwhelm her more. And so it's kind of the same thing at bedtime, which is what we were talking about, is after you've had that time for connection, if you've been in the middle of, like for you, if you're at work or I'm at work or whatever and something comes up, I generally don't want to talk about it right after. I need time to take in whatever just happened, think about it, process it, decide how I want to react to it, and then talk about it. Maybe it's later, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's a day, maybe it's an hour. And so as their logical brains come online, they start doing that too, you know, to see how it feels. Like she told me something, oh my God, it was hilarious. Yesterday she wore a Hermione Granger outfit for Halloween to school, and
nice.
I think one of the boys called it Hormione, and so I was like, well, that's interesting. Probably doesn't know what that means, but that's hilarious. And so she's like telling me,
good one, dude.
Yeah, good one. And she's telling me, and then like other people were saying it too. And I was like, well, how did that make you feel, babe? She's like, well, I didn't like it. You know, of course she didn't like it. And so, but it was a few days later that she brought it up because she finally felt okay to bring it up a couple days later. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And then I would explain to her, I'm like, well, guess what? You know, our last name, and I played sports. Guess what people used to call me? She's like, what? I'm like, crap piss. She's like, crap piss. And I was like, you know. And,
oh, man.
Yeah, so I didn't tell her, like, that's what you get to look forward to. But, you know, it was a good teachable moment of like, you know, people can say whatever they want. I'm like, honestly, it just motivated me to be even better. I'm like, because if you're going to say it incorrect, you're going to have to say it over and over and over and over again incorrectly. And I'm going to laugh every single time, you know, like, and so kind of just got her to that point where, it was like she could process through and kind of see the humor in it, where it's like, okay, instead of getting offended by everything, which we don't want to create. But again, it's back to what you were saying. Like 4 days later, 5 days later, it got brought up.
You said it was days later before she even brought that up.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that it wasn't important to her, or it wasn't a big deal to her. It's just like kids don't necessarily prioritize stuff like that. Like when my kids get home, their priority is getting a snack. Yeah. It's like, we're home from school. Did you bring a snack? Like, did you bring a snack in the car? Like, can we get a snack when we get home? Like, when can we have a snack? Can I have a second snack? You know, like that's their priority. Yes. Like that's their immediate world right now. And so they're not thinking like, well, what do I need to tell father about today that happened? It's like, that's just not, it's not that they're trying to hide something from you. It's just like, that's not what they're immediately thinking about. And so, and what you said about like things that come up at bedtime, it's like you are their captive audience at that point. Like most of the time throughout the day, you're probably doing something else when you're talking to them.
Such a good point.
You have to, because life, you know, like maybe you know, especially for you, you're probably making dinner, you're probably cleaning, you're probably washing dishes or whatever. And it's like, okay, tell me about your day, you know, that sort of thing. And
Yep.
I'm guilty of that all the time, where I'm just like, okay, tell me what happened. And then they're telling a story, and maybe it's like they get a little distracted, or the story's taking a little while, and it's like, yeah, okay. And then I have to go and do something else.
Yep.
But at bedtime, they have you as their captive audience, and they're going to tell you the story, and you know, you're not really distracted by anything else because you can't be.
Yep.
So it's probably not a coincidence that is when so many of the stories come out.
It's probably not.
What's that?
It's probably not at all. You know, I mean, it makes sense, right? They have complete undivided attention. Sorry, can you hear the chainsaw?
Sorry?
Can you hear the chainsaw in the background?
No, I can't. Okay, cool. No, I can't.
They're cutting down a coconut tree or something. The whole tree.
Florida, man. Jeez. Coconut trees down there. I'm worried about the leaves down in the yard over here. This coconut fell last week.
Oh my God! Right, I heard about that. My one of the coconut fell like in our little area we have, and Slim grabbed it. She's like, "Yes, we can drink from it." And I'm like, "Well, babe, we got to figure out how to open it." And so last time we had one, I had this old sword that I used to have since like high school. I'm sure you remember, like I had this like ridiculous sword. So I had this sword. So I was outside like trying to chop it open with this like shitty, you know, like $10 sword that I had in high school. I just kept taking it everywhere with me because it was hilarious. And I ended up breaking the sword trying to get the coconut to open.
Oh man!
So
it sort of survived so much.
I know.
It
was defeated by a coconut. So anyways, I like threw the sword away, but she kept the sheath of it, right? And I didn't know she like snuck away with the sheath of the sword. She's like, "Dad, I got the perfect thing." So we were like beating the shit out of it with the sheath of the sword that she kept last time until we got it to open up. And I'm like, "Baby, I think we need a machete." She's like, Do you have one of those?" I'm like, "I don't have a machete." She's like, "We need to go to Bass Pro and get one then." I'm like, "Okay." So coconuts can be fun like leaves, I suppose.
Yeah, that sounds like more fun than leaves, but you know.
Do you remember?
Anyway,
people are gonna hate this, I'm sure, but do you remember? Like, I swear to God, we're good people. But do you remember back in college when it would be like autumn leaf time, and we would get really drunk, and Caleb would get really drunk, and then we would be like, "Hey, see all those leaves that guy just raked up in his yard? It'd be hilarious if you put them back in his yard, because then he would wake up and think, 'Man, I thought I raked the leaves.'" And then, and then you realize now, like, that's the biggest dick move you could have ever done. Like, he's not gonna wake up and think that. He's gonna be like, "I fucking hate these kids."
I would be so mad. But it was when that happened too. I just remember like picturing it as like this guy coming out and his full yard being filled with leaves again, like you said.
Yeah.
But then walking by later, and there's just like 3 little jagged lines of leaves that just like as somebody ran through the yard. You know, like.
Oh God, being kids is awesome.
In a cartoon world.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will be just like a cartoon. Anyway.
I love it though. I love it. A little glimpse of reality in the country. These are the pranks that we're gonna do to people. We're gonna reopen their bags of leaves.
Yeah, I would be so upset if somebody did that to me now. What jerks?
Yeah, definitely. So another. All right, let's layer on top of this, because it is a reality that we're not always focused. We're not always on their level. We're not always paying attention to our children, because I find that all the time. She's telling me a story, and I'm trying to do dishes and look at her, and I'm trying while explaining to her we keep a clean house and that this matters because we don't want to have cockroaches because we live in South Florida and the kitchen needs to be clean, and all these things where people are like, "Oh, just leave the dishes in the sink." And I've done that before, but I don't want that to become a habit, because then when do they get done? Like when I wake up in the morning, that's a whole nother agenda. Like, things don't get to get pushed to the side. So in terms of that, how have you been able to handle like your anger and impatience towards telling them to do something or get something done, or like, when does dad lose his cool?
Dad loses his cool every day, at least once, like.
That's a very honest answer. That's a very honest answer.
Yeah. I mean, I do it all the time because you have to get really good at apologizing. You have to be patient, but you don't want to be one of those dads who blows up and then it's just like, then they disappear. And then it's just like, you don't follow up on that situation. It's just like, it's going to happen. You're going to lose your cool. You're going to get impatient. And sometimes that might look like, actually blowing up and yelling over something. Or sometimes it might just be like you're just being really standoffish with the kids, or like, and there's nothing worse than having like a little girl come up to you and be like, "What's wrong, Daddy? Like, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And you're just like, you want to be like, "No, I'm not. Like, I can't even explain to you this thing that's going on that's causing me to be a jerk to you right now." But you can't. You just have to apologize for it.
Yep.
Like, I've tried to make myself really available for stuff like that and just be like, "Hey, I should not have, even though it was taking you a long time to get your clothes on or whatever, or even though we were going to be late for this thing, I still shouldn't have said it like that, or like I shouldn't have done it this way." But there are also times when, you just have to kind of lay down the law too and just be like, "No, we're not doing this. Like, you got to go. Like, or we got to hurry up. Like, just listen to me."
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing because you don't want to ever hurt their little feelings and stuff. But yeah. And they're going to model that behavior after you too. Like, how you handle a difficult situation is how they're going to handle a difficult situation, which makes me wonder about myself. Cause like Jack will, fall over or something, and then he'll get up and he'll start stomping on the ground like he's angry at the ground that he fell down. And I'm like, I don't do that, do I? Do I get mad at inanimate objects? I'm like, maybe, I don't know.
I love it. They're perfect mirrors, and it's so funny. So now that she's been in school, she's learning new things, and it's actually kind of fun to see her learning like the new things and new jokes and whatever they are that people with older brothers tell, or all these kinds of things, and like she's like, "Dad, what's your name?" And I'm like, "Dad," and she's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Nose," and she goes, "What am I holding?" And I was like, "I don't know." She's like, nothing. She goes, "Dad knows nothing." And I'm like, okay, this is like, they're fun things. Yeah. And so all this stuff happens or whatever, but there's some things that she starts to do that I'm like, whoa, Sloan, talk to me here. Like, where did you get that from? That's not a behavior that we do in this house. We don't whine. We don't talk back like that. We don't yell really loud. Like, this isn't really you or how we do things here. Like, where did you pick up on it? Like, I'm not mad that you picked up on it. That's not how you and I behave, And the other day, she didn't want to do something, and she was laying in bed. I can't remember all the details. And I said something. And she's like laying sideways on the bed like this. And she's like, "Where's this coming from, Dad?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Doesn't sound like you." And I'm like, start laughing. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I like get on the bed. She's like, "The way you're parenting right now. Where did you learn this from?"
Oh my goodness.
It's like, oh my God. I'm like, I read it in a book, Slud. And then like we make a joke out of it and I fucking laugh. But it's like, it's so cool to see like the little, it does go in, It was awesome.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
You're seeing, I mean, like, sometimes the things you do, they really come back toward you, don't they?
In a huge way.
So what, I guess I would want to ask the same question to you. What happens when Dr. Rocco loses his cool?
Well, last night Dr. Rocco lost his cool. And so she's very much, I've said this before on here, she's very much like me, and you're not going to force her to do anything. And because I've chosen not to spank, and taking things away don't matter to her, taking TV away, that time doesn't matter to her. Like last night we were in it, and I ended up laughing eventually, but I was like, all right, baby, TV's gone for a week. She's like, week will fly by. I'm like, I will take it away for a month. She goes, not really that big of a deal. There's tons of toys in the house. I'm like, I will throw it away. She's like, do you need help carrying it? Like, and then she goes, what are you going to do? Just never watch TV again? I'm like, yeah, I don't care. She said, well, neither do I. I'm like, oh my God. So her willpower is so, I love it. I love her willpower. It's so fucking strong. And, it's unbreakable when she digs her heels into something, right? And so I sometimes don't even know how to navigate it. And last night, we were arguing with each other. We were going back and forth with each other, and she's screaming, and I'm like, Sloan, stop. Like, and I'm trying to get on her level. I'm trying to calm down. And, we ended up not going to what we were supposed to go to because I couldn't get her out the door, and it was this whole thing. And, like, if I chose to spank her, it would have been a day to spank her, but I just refused to do that now, And so it's like, okay, how am I going to feel about this later? What are we going to do? Right now, in this moment, I guess isn't the best teaching moment, but I'm trying to teach, so maybe that's kind of fucked up because I'm trying to navigate that. So I kind of we ended up dissipating the situation after about an hour, and she apologized to me first. She was like, I'm sorry for my behavior. And then I'm like, okay, now it's my, I need to apologize for my, like I went over on the couch with her, I held her, I hugged her, we calmed down, She just explained, like, sometimes she doesn't know how to move the emotions and all that kind of stuff, which was great. A little bit later, I apologized because I didn't want to do it immediately after her, apologize immediately after her. But I realized that she apologized because she's seen me apologize after acting a way that I didn't want to. Yeah. So I was like, okay, we're at least on the right track there, and then we kind of got to figure out, like, okay, how can we navigate this time? And I've told her before, and she said it before, and I said it again last night. I'm like, baby girl, it's okay. I'm still learning how to be a dad. It's the first time I've ever done it. And she's like, and I'm still learning how to be your daughter. I'm like, okay, like we're figuring it out together, one day at a time. So I definitely lose my cool. I try not to very often, but it does come up. And most of the time, again, it's probably some type of, like, she just needs more connection, and I wasn't able to give it to her at that time or that day. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but I always, like you said, apologize. I'm open with her. I hide nothing from her. I tell her, like, she's seen me frustrated. She's seen me angry. But one of the things I love that she has adopted is when it's over, it's over. Like, she snaps into, like, well, let's play now, or let's color now, or let's do whatever now. Like, Dad, look how cool this thing is. I'm like, I don't want to talk about how fucking cool it is. Like, I'm still at a 9. Like, why are you? But then I'm like, wait, maybe I'm supposed to live more like her. Maybe I'm not supposed. Like, she came up to me last night and tried to talk to me, and I was like, I found myself wanting to be in a good mood and wanting to do what she wanted to do, but all the old programming was like, I need to be a dick right now. Like, fuck that. You can't act that way, And then I start analyzing myself, and I'm like, I think I want to be more like her. Because if the shit comes up in my life, her life's better than mine right now. She's happy and going around the thing and living life great, and I'm purposely trying to make myself angry still, instead of just moving on from this thing that happened. So
you feel like you deserve to be angry for it, right? Like, I deserve to be angry for that. Like, I'm right to be angry.
Right. Yes.
Yep. And I do the same thing.
But I've witnessed her move through it so fast that I want to have that ability. And so I don't want to kill it in her. So it started to force me to be like, fuck it, you're right. Let's go play. Let's have a tickle fight. Like, we're past it. We did it. We got it out. We're on to the next fucking thing. And maybe if we all lived a little bit more like kids, we wouldn't be so goddamn grumpy about everything all the time. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's, like, a thing that we lose as we get older, is, like, a kid's ability to what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe it's compartmentalize things.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, if my daughter is really upset about something, and you try to just be like, I know that's really rough, but we can't do anything about it right now. Like, just maybe we'll get past it. Try to think of something else right now, and we'll do something else. Like, she can't make herself think of something else.
Right.
This is the thing. This is like important. This is big. We can't just think about something else. But then it's like she can do the opposite thing too, where it's like if it's not on her mind, she is able to, like you said, just focus on coloring or playing or whatever. It's not weighing on her, and that's going to change. As parts of the brain develop.
Of course,
it's like emotions kind of collide and stuff. That's going to change. But for now, it's interesting to just be like, oh, okay, you're over that now, or whatever. It's like,
but maybe
it
changes, and of course it changes as the brain develops. We know that for sure. But maybe it's not as extreme as we have it.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's less extreme, and then I would imagine you're going to live a happier life. Like, I remember purposely dragging things out with my first girlfriend that didn't need to be drug out for weeks just because. I'm like, fuck you, not okay. What if I had a different programming and I didn't do that? What if it was maybe a day and then I could move past it, And so I do think that, I don't know, live more like children. Like, I loved, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but I loved, who was that guy? We probably both read the book Relentless. Tim Grover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tim Grover in the book Relentless.
I'm talking on the book, but yeah.
I think the book's called Relentless. And but he talks about how, like, kids are like that. They know what they fucking want and they're going to go after it and get it. And then we beat it out of them. And I'm like, that's true, and I don't want to, which is part of that parent-teacher conference. Like, I'm like, I don't want to beat that out of my daughter. I don't. That's part of the biggest struggle, if we're breaking it down into disciplining or the power struggle that we were in last night together, is I view it as giving up authority and power when she's not doing what I want her to do. But at the same time, I don't want to force that out of her, because that's what's going to make her who she is later if I can just figure out how to navigate it when she's younger. And if anybody has any suggestions on how to do that, go ahead and toss them in the comments.
I'm really glad that you brought it back to discipline, because I wanted to talk a little bit about what you said about, like, well, I choose not to spank. And, like, there are some people who, especially like our parents and stuff, like, that's how you discipline. That's what you do. And if you don't, you're doing a disservice to your kid.
Correct.
And I think, again, it all comes down to just knowing your kid and knowing what works. Because some kids, you could spank them and, like, it's not going to work.
That's my daughter.
Discipline is not going to work for that kid.
100%.
Like, ow, that hurt. Now I'm going to go do something else or whatever. And I've found with each of my kids, different types of discipline work with them. Because my oldest daughter, I mean, like, the worst thing that you could do would be to not play with her, or not want to go and play something with her. So it's just like, okay, look, if you throw that toy at me again, I don't want to play with you anymore. And it's like, whoa. Or it's like, it gets her attention. Now, that doesn't work with my second daughter. My second daughter, she needed to have, like, timeouts to calm down.
Yeah.
Like, I had to either, my oldest daughter never had a timeout the entire time that she was young. She didn't need them.
Yeah.
She needed a different type of discipline. Now, my second daughter, she needed those timeouts to calm down and then be able to collect herself before we could move on from the situation.
Yeah.
And now what I'm finding with little 2-year-old Jack is I've realized, like, if he hears somebody yelling, like whether it's me or somebody else or whatever, he doesn't like yelling. And so when he starts yelling at me, I'm like, Jack, I don't like when you yell at me. Do you want me to yell at you? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay, then don't yell at me.
Yeah.
Or like, and that becomes, you don't want to, like, threaten your kid, I guess, but it's like getting him to understand that on his level is like, it's like, Jack, don't do that. or I have to yell at you.
Right.
And he's like, oh, like,
well, it's good you're that
totally
intentional and
different
aware.
for each kid. I guess my point is it's been totally different what discipline they need and what is going to work with them. And you only know the difference by spending time with them and developing a connection with them and realizing how their personalities and their minds work. And like, so there's people who draw like a hard line, like, I'm never going to do this for discipline because my parents did this and I don't want to do that, or vice versa.
Right.
And I don't know, I think you have to be a little flexible. They need discipline, but you need to do it in whatever way is going to work, I guess.
Right. No, I mean, I think it goes back to the thing that, you know, everything comes back to is being intentional about everything you do, setting your intentions. And if your intention is to be able to pay attention to each of your children and find out what works and what doesn't work, that's what you get. Like real quick story before we have to hop off. I tried timeout with Sloan. She wasn't staying in timeout. She wasn't going to stay there. She wasn't going to stay in a room. Like, it didn't matter what it was. And at one point, I remember trying to hold her in the corner, and it was literally like trying to hold a 500-pound bear in a corner. And I'm like, this isn't working either. You know, like the willpower. And so, I mean, to me, it's just so refreshing to hear another parent paying attention, being intentional, and being like, okay, every single being in person is different, and how can I meet those needs the best way that I possibly can? You know, so hats off to you, man. I always learn stuff when we talk. I fucking love it.
Dude, I've always learned tons of stuff from you too. Like, it's like you said, it's refreshing because you just got to get real sometimes and be like, look, we're just figuring this out as we go. Like, it's just figuring out what works and trying to remember what we didn't like.
Yeah, of course.
Kids or,
yep.
You know, it is. It's just it's an adventure for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hop on here with me. We're going to definitely do this. You'll be a regular guest.
Sweet. Dude, it was a pleasure. Thank you. That was fun fielding some different questions and stuff. That was really neat.
Yeah, I liked it. We'll do kind of the same thing next time, probably.
All right.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.